So what's next? There's a lot of information and wisdom that has been shared previously, which is available on YouTube for you to tap into. So I'm not going to go over the preamble of all of that. I'm going to stay focused on the new norm, and from the new norm, really define what's next. So you've heard me say this the last couple of times, that those of you who have been there, that one of the key foundational features of the new norm is that, unknown is the known, uncertainty is certain, change is constant. So what's another facet that I became very aware of last week about the new norm, which is worth sharing here, and that leads us into the focus on what we are going to be talking about today. What is certain is that our planet, the Earth, will thrive. That's certain now. It's made the choice, it knows it, and it's already well on its way. And it's crossed the point of no return. So it's already on its way and it's thriving. So the planet is thriving. That is certain. Humans, and with that will be will be the living beings that make up this planet. So it's certain that they too will thrive. Humans are a part of the living being ecosystem of this planet. So humans will thrive too. Now, which humans thrive, which just survive, and which no longer exist is going to be determined by their attitude. And it was the attitude of humans that had a direct impact on damaging the environment, damaging nature as we know it, damaging even the pH balance of the oceans. All of that came from the attitudes of humans. It felt like such a simplistic statement, and how could that be the case? And yet, when you look at the evidence of what has come about as a result of this social distancing, as a result of this social isolation, and as a result of the fact that it is occurring across the world, literally human attitude has had to focus on self-protection and self-preservation. And then that's led on to, a self-upliftment, a self-connection. But literally the attitude has turned its attention away from what's out there to what's in here. Even though it began with fear as a reason why that was done, but the attitude of humans has started to shift, where more and more and more of us are becoming very aware of what really matters, what's truly valuable to us. And it took only a short amount of time of that to occur for nature to show how it can resurrect and reclaim itself. That is the power of this attitude. At no other time in history could wisdom like this come in to be shared so publicly, that what's having an impact on our planet, where the planet is going down a negative route and it almost looks like it's going to be destroyed, is the attitude of humans. So now where we are, given the planet is back in center stage and is now in charge of its own destiny, it has made the choice, and what's certain is the planet shall thrive. We're not talking about survive, we're talking about the planet's decision is planet shall thrive, and it has started thriving. And there is evidence of it all over, from those luminescent waves, blue waves in Venice and Southern California, to the crystal clean waters of Venice and Italy, to the fluffy Simpson clouds against the blue sky here in Mumbai, dolphins in the reclaimed oceans of Mumbai. the olive turtles and the sighting of rainbows, like every single day that Catherine has been experiencing. And I'm receiving these rainbow photographs, literally the last 10 days, it's rainbows galore from everywhere. You know, my son in Berlin, my niece in London, Singapore. The planet is literally like, you know, volume turned up. It's showing us what the journey to thriving looks like. So it's excellent news. The planet shall thrive, and along with it, all of the living beings that make it up. Humans are a part of that. And what's going to determine which of us thrive, which of us survive, which of us are, you know, are no more, is really going to depend on our attitude. And that in itself brings about a sense of certainty, you know, because you control your attitude. Our focus in this series is, you know, what next? In the new norm, what next? And here the journey is the journey into the 7 C's. And today we are focusing on the 3rd C, which is collaboration. What we've done is choice. We've journeyed into choice. We've journeyed into certainty. And today we are journeying into collaboration. And this aspect of the new norm, which is about attitude, is what is going to be foundational at the core of how collaboration is to occur. Now, when we are collaborating, because we're just trying to survive, there's a foundation of desperateness. When we are collaborating, when we are trying to protect something, there is an undertone of this, there's something collapsing, you know, and there's an undertone of being a savior. Now, when you have an undertone of being a savior, where you're trying to save something, what that does is it gives energy to having things in place that need to be saved. And given that the planet shall thrive, you know, we're talking about thrive. The attitude of being a savior is not what enables anything to thrive. You save just about. Thriving calls for a very different attitude. It calls for an attitude of celebration. You know, celebrating the wins, celebrating, you know, the nuances of what's thrived. And when you come with the intention of collaborating, you have, you know, you have the jazz music that takes place, a jazz orchestra that happens, a symphony occurs. And it is a jazz symphony where each one plays the way they are called to play. And they're in their groove, they're in their rhythm. And when they know that what they're bringing together is this wonderful compilation of music, that by itself will flow into each other. I've had the fortune, I was a regular visitor to the jazz cafe in Camden, in London, and loved going there. So, you know, was quite a patron. I had the fortune of, you know, watching these jazz musicians rehearse for a show that is coming on. It's so different than any other rehearsals that I've ever been on. The intention of what is going to occur is what drives these musicians. So, and it's like, you know, they just love their art. They have that inner self-confidence. They're plugged into their rhythm, and off they go. In complete partnership, working with their musical instrument, knowing that they are going to collaboratively co-create something that is just going to be magical. There is a rhythm, there is a structure to that, to what seemed chaotic. And that's the experience that the audience has. You know, the audience feels, you know, it's sort of unbridled and unleashed. There's a discipline there, and yet there is a flow. So collaboration, the sea of collaboration that we are talking about is not about lip service. It isn't about, okay, I played my part. The intention is the next C of this collaboration, which is the co-creation. Now, collaborating, coming from the attitude of we are thriving. It's not we shall. The planet is thriving. And that's the decision that has been made. Everything stems from a decision. So if you decide to fight against the virus, then it's going to become stronger because you've signed up to a fight. Now the good news is, given that the planet has chosen that it is thriving, some humans will make the decision of fighting, and therefore they'll be battling against something that's becoming stronger for them. It does not affect all of us. That's the cool part about it. That's the exciting part about it. That if you choose that you're in the realm of thriving, and you transform your attitude to one of I am thriving, and choose to notice that you are at one with nature that's around you, and look at nature, how it's thriving already. And you plug into your own nature, you plug into your truth, and you start thriving. And in that thrival, that this is a piece about collaboration. In that thriving attitude, the attitude of thriving is one of collaboration as opposed to conflict. There is no thriving if you're really trying to battle, and you're in a zone that is ridden with conflict. And there is no thriving if you're even trying to resolve a conflict. The reality is the planet shall thrive, and it is. And I'm a part of this planet, I thrive. And so it is. I start noticing, first of all, what's outside of me through looking at how nature is thriving in different parts of the world. You only have to go on the 24/7 live cams around the world. You'll see some magical stuff that's going on. Very real. And you step into your attitude of thriving, and you start noticing all that is actually shifting and transforming within you, that is giving you a reason to celebrate the thriving as opposed to barely surviving. And that, from that attitude emerges a way in which you collaborate. And the first collaboration, and that is the process we are going to do today, and some of you who were on the journey recently have experienced it, the first collaboration that we are going to anchor in at the call today is the collaboration between your soul being and your human form. I say that this particular pandemic energy and the fear and all of that has taken place got hijacked by the divine, even though it wasn't initiated in that way. It was initiated by forces of command and control. It got hijacked by the divine because there is nothing that could have the power to so rapidly bring humans back to themselves. Even the daily wage workers here in India, even those that are migrant workers who've come from different states and cannot go back to the states because the state borders have been shut here in India. Regardless of wherever they are, whatever they may be experiencing physically, there is a recognition and realization of the honor that they deserve, and then honoring of their own self-worth, which is dignity. That movement that, some of us, and Nancy here is there, she was there, the movement that we began, 4 years ago, of people reclaiming their dignity, returning that remembrance back, that has started to occur. And that is very much the starting point. If you can't honor your own worthiness, it's very difficult to come from a space of honoring that in others or in nature itself. So the attitude that you take on, the starting point is honoring of your own worthiness. And from that worthiness, you start honoring that in others, and you automatically experience the vibe that it feels like when you're thriving. Collaboration in the realm of thriving is very different than collaboration in the realm of survival. It may feel like the world is fighting for its survival, and the reality is, what's certain now, and there's more than sufficient evidence, is that the planet has decided it's thriving. And you can now get into what's certain about you. Now, if you look at nature, if you were to just apply an attitude lens to nature, and as it's starting to thrive, as the air quality improves, the water quality improves, new species are birthing, existing species are starting to emerge with confidence and thriving. And there's a coexistence that is starting to occur between animals in the wild and humans in the cities. There is a recognition of each other's worthiness that is happening. If you look at what are the qualities of nature as it's thriving, what's become available to it, there's a bountifulness, and there's infinite beauty that you just can't stop admiring. Catherine shares a photo of the rainbow, and yet another rainbow, and yet another rainbow. And every day, it just gives us an equal amount of joy to see that spectrum of color. A tiny sliver of luminescent blue wave, and the surfer riding the blue wave. And another thing, which is meant to be like 3 days, if that, is this continuing, so many weeks later. Every time you look at it, it gives you that joy. Every time I look at the Grand Canal under the Rialto Bridge, or, the place that I would often land to go to my hotel just by St. Mark's Square, when I look at the waters of the Grand Canal in Venice, every time I look at it, every time the sunlight sparkles back, it's bountiful. It feels like it's there in my cells. There's a cellular receiving of bounty that comes from the attitude of thriving. There's an abundance that starts to reawaken in ourselves. And it's a cellular abundance, recognition. Thriving is a cellular phenomenon, just like survival is a cellular phenomenon. Your cells shut off until you feel completely stopped. Thriving is a cellular phenomenon. So get it, just learn from nature what's available to you if you get into that space of thriving. So as you have that cellular popping open to the vibe of thriving, how many cells do each one of us have? Cells are made up of nanocells, microcells, right? And we are not just our physical presence, we are actually, our field, which is way bigger than just our physical presence. And our field is made up of cells as well. So each one of us is walking around with gazillion cells, each one vibing the vibe of thriving. Oh, that's a wrap. Olivia, if you're here, it's time to create one. The vibe, each one, the vibe of thriving. So you can imagine there are all these gazillion, each cell is whole and complete in itself. And you get into this vibe of thriving, it literally is like plumping up of cells that takes place. If any of you have done a live blood analysis, you see what a healthy blood cell looks like. It's really plumped up and it's healthy. An unhealthy blood cell, what that looks like. It's like literally as we start getting into the vibe of thriving, our cells plump up. So we have these gazillion beings in each one of us that is emanating this vibe of thriving. And even amongst us, you know, here on this call alone, there are 58 of us. There's such a multiplied effect that is present right here. And the best part is, it is in rhythm, in the attunement of where this planet is. And we become one of the jazz players of this amazing jazz orchestra that the planet is putting on. It's showtime. And that's why I say, what next? It's a journey into the 7 C's. And today the C is collaboration. Now, when that starts to happen and you get into that thrive space, where's conflict? Gone. Conflict it's not a thriving response. Now, you may witness conflict around you. You may witness it, you may hear it, and you're in the space of thriving. You don't get sucked into the content of the conflict. You also learn to honor it. You know, when people get into this conflict debate, and others join in, it just becomes one big, humongous conflict. Conflict leads to separation, leads to war, leads to reinforcing the origin of a deep-seated sadness and pain of separation that many, many religious scriptures talk about, which is that original separation from the Creator. As we get into the space of thriving, it enables us to collaborate sans conflict, without conflict. We collaborate from the spirit of thriving. The savior philosophy disappears. Savior, like one person has to be weak for the other person to save them. So what happens? We propagate weak and strong. We all are strong. I am just as strong as you, and you are just as strong as I am. We don't have to go and save nature anymore, if you realize. Nature has shown, I'm all right, okay, you just work with you. And it's holding the space. We are in the container of nature that has reclaimed itself. And the container of nature that has reclaimed itself is the vibe of okayness. And in that okayness, it can go celebrate and be bountiful, turn the volume up, get amplified in how it shows up in its complete grandeur, glamour, and beauty. And it remains centered in its okayness. I've become so present to, I'm so fortunate to be right here in the middle of this super busy city, and it's not busy right now, but all the constructions tell you about the bygone days when it was a super busy city, and it is. People are still in their homes, but they're not outside. I'm just so fortunate to be here overlooking the forest. And there's a very clear guidance I received, in September last year, which was that my next move had to be a home overlooking a forest. And here I am. So I'm present to every single day noticing the change in the orchestra of the bird songs. So if that can happen in this little, microcosm of Mumbai with the bird songs, can you imagine what's going to occur as each one of us starts to get into a thrive wave? So much easier to surf a wave. Catherine can share her own experience. It's so much easier to surf a wave when you're in the rhythm of the wave. And there is a lightness of being that gets called for. You're paddling on your board, and then you just know when you know, and off you go with the wave. Collaboration. The sea of collaboration is about working with, not working against. There is no battle. There is no fight in the realm of thriving. Now you can choose to fight against things. I saw all these campaigns about we're going to fight the virus. Well, it's shown us. Go fight. It's going to take its course, and it's going to take its course. And it's taking its course. I mean, the virulence of the virus energy already is so minuscule. What's keeping it in place at the strength that it is just the attitude of humans. Just like what was keeping the crazy pollution of the air in Delhi was the attitude of humans. The virus is just another being. Just like a bird is another being, just like a butterfly is another being. That's where it has gotten to. It wasn't that way when it began. That's the way it is now. Because there are some of us who have taken on, who are just working with it and receiving it for why it came here, knowing that the divine has hijacked the plan and it has become the virus that opens the crown of humanity. So I can talk about something like this, which is it's time to bring in that thriving attitude because the planet has decided to thrive. Let's just be part of the planet. That's thriving. Having something contrary to what the attitude of the planet is will at best get us into a state of just surviving. And, it could even get us to go out of the planet because it doesn't match the frequency of the planet. We don't have to fix anyone outside of us. Just focus on you. Each one of you has got at least, you've got a gazillion cells. So, having said all of that, I would like to honor those who have asked some questions and go over some questions so that we have sufficient time at the end to do the process that brings to an end a deep-seated conflict that actually gets lodged at the time that we take birth. So we will work on that so that we can return conflict-free within an understanding of an exquisite, enchanted partnership between our soul and this human form. That becomes the foundation of how we embody, embrace, and play out the Thrive Vibe.